Guys, we're now going to start by installing Visual Studio Code on the Mac. Just simply go to Google, put in Visual Studio Code on the Mac. Just click on this. You'll get code editing, redefine, download for Mac. We can get insiders, which has certain enhancements but can be more unstable. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. Or we can get the regular stable version. I usually like to get the stable one. So since we're on the Mac, let's get the stable one. It should start downloading. At this point, I'll just tell you a little bit about the insiders build. The insiders build is essentially the latest build by Visual Studio, and you can get it side by side with the current regular stable build, and you can work from it as well on the same machine. But the only thing is, it's more like for Visual Studio Code to give them feedback, or for people to try out the new features which they've given you. But the stable version is like it'll be more bug free. Once you get the zipped file, click on that, and you'll see the application here. Just double click on that, say open, and you'll see Visual Studio Code open up. So this is Visual Studio Code is cross-platform, and I'll put up videos on the Windows and Linux as well. So don't worry about that. And just a couple of other points. You can drag the .app file to the applications folder. What that means is, if I go to my downloads right now, this is the application, so you can copy that and put it into applications, right? So now what I can do is, from applications itself, I can open up Visual Studio. There it is. So you can always just pull this up. And I also want to show you guys a few quick points which help you as you work along with Visual Studio Code on the Mac. The first one is, if you go to VS Code here on the icon, right click or double click with two fingers, let's go to options and say keep in dock. It'll keep it in the dock here. It's handy whenever you want to use it. It's pretty quick. VS Code is a pretty small download. According to the website, it's less than 100 MB and has a disk footprint of less than 200 MB, so it's pretty lightweight, easy to use, better than Visual Studio Code in that aspect in terms of weight. Lighter the better, at least that's what I think. And in terms of system requirements on the Mac, all you need is to make sure you have Yosemite or above OS X. So I guess you would have it at this point when I'm shooting this video, and I would recommend you have a GB of RAM at least. You can see what my system, if you go to my About This Mac, you'll see I'm running El Capitan and it's working fine, works great. The other thing I'd recommend, so when you're on code, you can go here and go to About Visual Studio Code, and you'll always know the version you're running. It's handy if you want to do a manual update in case you have some bug and you know that there's a fix in the next version and you need to check what version you have. You can use this feature here. Let's start off by installing Visual Studio Code from the Windows platform. So you just need to type in Visual Studio Code on Google. Let me just show you how. This one, I'm in Chrome. You just type in Visual Studio Code. The first link which will pop up. It's a lightweight, less than 100 MB application. So very handy for lots of purposes, which we'll see in the series below. But let's get started. So you have an insiders build and a stable. Insiders, let me start the installation and I can talk about it while that's happening. So the insiders build is more recent features, more enhancements, but it's usually not so well tested. So you usually want to go with a stable version, but the insider will give you more features, but it can have more bugs. So it's a trade-off there. Anyway, I've got the stable version. It'll give you the exe file. Say next, accept the agreement. This is the default location. I don't mind it, but you can select whatever location you want for the installation. If you want the shortcut, this just says to select all the tasks you would like to set up, which you would like. So I would like the desktop application, right? You can choose to add it to the path if you wish. I don't really have the others selected. You can if you want to add open code, action to Windows Explorer, just like a few toggleable options, but I just want the desktop icon. Say install. Shouldn't take too long. Seems like we're done. Say finish. And I can see I've got Visual Studio Code over here, and I can see it coming up on my desktop as well. There you go. And then let's get into working with it. So for a lot of the upcoming lectures, we're going to be using a simple Java file just to demonstrate a lot of the different Visual Studio Code features. So I just wanted to make sure you have something basic file just set up so you can work with, for you to work with. You can really create your own file and just create your own code snippet and start working with that as we go through the lessons if you're familiar with some other language. But for your benefit, in case you have little programming experience and you just want to, I'll guide you through one of the simpler, I would say, hello world type programs, and we'll set that up on Visual Studio. So as we explore different features with the UI and debuggers and version control and stuff like that, you'll have a file to work with. If you've already installed Java and are familiar with Java, all you need to do is create a simple hello world program in a new file in Visual Studio. So what you can do, so the way you would do that, I'll go over that as well. So let's start from the very basics. So let me cross all this out, right? So this is what you get in the blank screen. If you get the welcome, just cross out the welcome, and this is the absolute bare body Visual Studio landing page. Now the first thing we want to do is go to extensions, right? The two extensions we want are language support for Java and debugger for Java. So if you look at the requirements here, it needs Java 8, 9, 10 or any higher version, and debugger also needs Java to be installed. So the first thing I'm going to have you guys do is install Java. If you already have Java, that's great. If you don't know if you have Java or not, the way to do that is all you need to do is go to terminal, type java c -version, and if you get a version coming up which is 1.8 or greater, you're good. If it says command not found, you probably don't have the right version of Java, and you can install the latest version of Java. The way to do that is, let me open up a Chrome window so we can so you just go to Java install Oracle, right, and just pick up whichever is the latest version. Up to you. You can pick up, as I see, SE12 here, but any version above 1.8 is fine. So you install the latest version of Java, and once that's done, you can install both of these extensions, right? And you also have the option of getting the Java extension pack, which combines a bunch of extensions, including the two we need. But I like to individually and manually install the ones that I require. So I suggest just getting language support for Java by Red Hat and debugger for Java. So once that's done, what I want you to do is you click here on Explorer, right? Either you use a different editor and type this in and save that file, right? And then open up the file here. So you can say file, new file, and and you can just save a file like this, right? And put it into so I've created a new file. It's a Java file. If your extensions are installed correctly, what you'll see is debug and run options coming here. And all I want you to do is just create a simple JavaScript file, a Java file here. You can use any other language again. I'm just doing it for Java in case you want to just follow along with the tutorial. So simple class, public class, class name, public static void, main. Just copy it as it is if you're not really familiar with Java. Put in a string. We're going to use this to debug and put in a print statement. Very simple. And now we'll get into using different features. You can use new terminal to just compile it. So this will open up a terminal here. And what you can do now is use, first let's make sure we're in the right directory. This is not really a Linux or Java tutorial, so I'm not getting into the details of those. ls just shows me all the files that are there. And then you can do java c So I see a error, right? It's that the file name is wrong. So in Java, the name of the class has to match the name of the file in this case. So yeah, the file is compiling just fine. And now we'll start getting into the different features. Also execute the file using Java and then the name of the file. Visual Studio Code is a text and code editor. So let's get into managing how the UI. On the leftmost side you have the activity bar. At the bottom you have the status bar, or yeah, this is the status bar at the bottom. And then here you have the sidebar, and this is the editor area, and then you have a panel with the terminal usually open up here. So these are the 4 or 5 main key items which you use. So the editor is where all your files sit and you have your code which you edit. Then the sidebar is basically either the explorer or search, anything you want to be running in here. Then the status bar gives you status of the current files you're working on. The activity bar lets you switch to debugger, git, search and all that. And panels of course switch you between terminal, debug console, output, problems and a host of other things which we'll explore. So one thing Visual Studio Code allows you to do is edit 2 files at the same time. So do command backslash or control backslash, and you can use alt in Windows I guess, but so you can have 2 files open at the same time like this, and that's pretty handy when you're trying to edit 2 things at the same time or comparing diffs. Although if you make a change here, it'll make a change on the left side as well because it's the same file. So it's better if you're working on 2 separate files, unless you want that. You can switch between different tabs that you've opened up. So you'll see this is gray, this is gray, this is white. I can do command 1, 2 and 3 and switch between them. You have a mini map. So it's usually, let me show you. So this is the mini map, but this is a very small file, so you can't really see it. So this is a longer file, and you see the mini map which helps you jump to different code pieces. Then we've got the Explorer, which is the tab here. It's very handy. It's like an advanced version of Explorer, like the regular Finder that you have on the Mac, or the file My Computer search which you get on Windows. So here you can create folders. So let's say we're currently in project Java folder. I can have a new folder, call it, sorry, QA, right? So I have a folder here, and then I can move files, copy files. So let's say I copy this file and I go to QA, I can paste it in, right? So that's simple things which you can do even in the regular Finder, but here it's a little bit better because you don't have to open up Finder and you can do it directly from VS Code. Moving on, let's check out some additional features. The first one I want to show you is how to use Terminal and the Explorer together, right? So let's start off. Essentially, if you have any file here, right click and say open in Terminal, and you'll see that the file, you get a terminal opened up here with set to the file location. So that's pretty handy, and you can immediately start working with the file. You can see that we're at the location. So any file you're working on, you can quickly open it in terminal and edit it in whichever way you want, right? The next thing I want to show you is the outline view. So if you go here, let me minimize this, you'll see something called outline, right? So let's say we're at this file right now. Right now, in outline, you can essentially see all the functions. It's like literally like an outline, and you can like if there's any issue, that'll become red. So it's like gives you a quick overview of the project. So let me just here. So now you can see that there's a problem with the class. So you can see in the outline the class level has become red, but the functions are fine. So you're getting all the functions listed here. If I take, I know what the problem is, but if I just fix that right now temporarily. So now in this file there are no issues, right? Right. So this file's got no issues. And reload, you can see all the functions here. So if I create an error, right? You can see the red marker has come up because it's expecting a closing bracket. Or if I was to create a syntactical problem in that particular line, syntactical problem on this line now, and what you can see is that this has become red, so it's showing you the exact function or the location where the issue is. This isn't so prevalent as a problem in such a small file, but when you have very large bits of code, knowing where the problem has come and just directly clicking on the outline together is pretty handy. So that's the outline view pretty much. You have a few other options here. Follow cursor, filter on type, so you can filter on different things to get the outline. I would say just keep it on position so it reflects the main editor. And you can do follow cursor, so whatever you select will get highlighted in the outline also. So that's a handy feature. The next thing is open editors. So in open editors, you see all the files that you've got open. There are a few conditions by which Visual Studio decides if it's going to come here. I think it's basically either if you've made a change to a file, or if you double click a file's header, or if you open a file that's not part of the current folder. Like in those conditions, you'll get whatever you need in the open editors. I just normally, whichever files are open here show up in the open editor, and that's pretty handy, right? There are a lot of other views here. So we've got search, git, debug, and extensions. And we'll jump into how to use them next. Check out the command palette. So what you do is Command Shift P, and here you'll get this icon and this drop down sort of. So it provides you access to a lot of the commands, and you can see shortcuts following them, right? And there's a long list of them, and we can get into going over the breakup of this, but for now let's just play around with some of the key ones. So I'm going to show you what they are. So Command P lets you navigate to any file by typing its name. So here we are. Well, you can see a lot of files in the drop down, but you can see you can just click on the file and navigate to the file, right? Then the other one which I like to use is Command /. It lets you toggle comments, really handy. Then the other one which is really helpful is Shift G. Sorry. So it's Control G, and you can toggle to any line number. And another one is Shift Command O. It will take you to any, it's like a find, so it'll let you navigate to a specific symbol. So here we came to is because I typed is. So yeah, that's just to give you an idea of how to use the command palette. You can pick up any command you want to use and go with it. Another thing I want to talk about is the Zen mode, as they call it. Basically what it does is it isolates all the views and keeps the editor. You can do so by saying Command K and Z. Command K and Z. And then press escape. You can get out of it. So that's the Zen mode, pretty helpful. Using your color theme in Visual Studio is pretty easy. Just go to Code, Preferences, and you'll see color theme. You can also do this with Command K and T, and you can switch the color theme. You can see it changing. That's the default. If you need to switch to the default, remember you can go to dark plus default. Themes, just go to extensions and type theme, and maybe install a new theme. And now you can select this theme. So if you notice here, right, you can now select Atom 1 Dark. It uses the material theme. So once you've installed this, Code, Preferences, you'll see a few options here with material. So we can do that. Not bad. So like with any other editor, Visual Studio Code also has a lot of keyboard shortcuts that you can work with. There are a lot of default keyboard shortcuts. You can create your own. You can edit the keys which perform the keyboard shortcuts, and you have a lot of options here. So let's jump into how to work with them. The first thing you need to do, Code, Preferences, Keyboard Shortcuts, right? So here we have a list of all the keyboard shortcuts that there are with the commands and the corresponding key binding. See, there are a lot of options here. We have the source option, which lets you see whether it's default or user. And in the user situation, I've created an example. So you can do change key binding, remove key binding, reset, and change when expression. So in change, you're changing the literal key binding. You can remove it so it'll stop having a shortcut, and you can reset it to what the original was. Of course, you can copy the command and show same key binding. So same key bindings basically brings up any duplicates that you have. So both of these have the same shortcut associated with them. So if you're feeling that there's some sort of overriding going on, you can fix it from here. And now let's get into actually using some of these, especially the more frequent and commonly used ones. Visual Studio Code provides you with a reference sheet of all the shortcuts available by default. So that's over here on their website. But I don't think you need all of them all the time, really. You just need like maybe 7 or 8 frequently used ones, and I'll go over those. So number 1 is command / which toggles comments in and out. So that's really handy whenever you need a toggle for, like, most editors have one button for commenting and then one for uncommenting. It's useful to have sort of one button to do both of those. Then the keyboard shortcut for looking at any errors is just Shift, Command, and M. So all the problems will come up. So that's handy when you're trying to debug, right? If you want to change the theme, which we went over in the themes, again Command K and T, right? That's handy. If you want to get into a little more code editing type ones, so the first thing is, if you want to install an extension, it's Shift Command X, right? All the extensions will pop up. I've gone over Zen Mode side by side. So if you want to create two files, Command and then \, you'll get two sort of editors here. And then Command 1, 2, 3 will help you toggle between them, right? Then another handy one is Control and Tab. All the files you've been working with recently will show up here, and you can switch quickly between them. Then the next one is how you copy a line up or down. So let's say we have this line, right? And you want to copy it up or down. What you can do is Shift, Option, and down key. So Shift, Option, down key will let you delete the lines which you, will let you copy down a line or up. So with the up, you just need the upper arrow key with Shift and Option pressed. Of course, these keyboard shortcuts are for the Mac. You can find the definitions for Windows on the website as well. Option gets replaced by Alt, and Command usually gets replaced by Control. Then the next one is to when you need to go to a specific line, Control G, and you can put in the line number, right? Then another handy one is to trim out white spacing. This helps when you're like comparing files and trying to find differences when white spacing is the difference. So for this, you use Command K and X, and it'll trim off any white space. I think that's largely it for the frequently used ones. And then of course there are many others which you can use as time goes on. But this is just to give you a quick introduction. Let's get into a couple of features about saving. Before I start, one frequently used shortcut that I'll be using is Command B. It toggles the bar over here. So let's get into how to change the save mechanism. So you do have autosave. It needs to be turned on usually. Just go to preferences, go to settings. There are two things here called user settings and workspace settings. Go to workspace settings and here put so you can have autosave. It can be off on changes or with a delay. I like to set it to after delay and set the time to 10 seconds. This is in milliseconds. So I've set it to 10 seconds. And when I make a change, you can see the changes. It's gone, the circles come, but after 10 seconds it'll save and you'll just see a cross. Of course, Command S will manually save it also. Another feature in Visual Studio is that when you exit, Visual Studio remember all the unsaved changes and keep them as it is when you come back. So if you just exit using like quit Visual Studio Code, it'll remember all the unsaved changes for you. Jump right into searching. So Visual Studio is pretty good on search and it lets you search in the currently open folder pretty easily. What you need to do is press Shift, Command and F and you'll see a search pop up over here. And you can search for anything. So just the word window and I can see it showing up. And you can see a small preview of all the lines where the word came, right? So that's pretty handy. And then what you want to do is explore some of the other features that we have here. So if I want to replace it, just click on the arrow here and you get replace option. You get a few options here as well. So this matches the whole matches the case, so capitals and small letters. This will match the whole word. So as you see, Windows is coming here and lots of different combinations with the word window in the middle of them. So it's like a substring. But if you do this, then it's only when the whole word matches. And this is for regular expressions. So let's say we wanted to replace window with window 2, right? You can do so here. And just hit enter. So now if I search window 2, right? Sorry. So we had window. You search for that. You want to replace it with Windows 2, right? Just open up the options here. So this is if you want to include and exclude files. And this is if you actually want to go ahead with the replace. So we have 10 occurrences of window. If you want to replace it with window 2, so let's say we hit replace, right? Now the replacement is done. So you hit Windows 2 and you can see window 2 is now the keyword which is in place. So let's say you've done a few searches and you want to quickly go back to an older search, right? Just use the upper arrow key and you can go up and down your history of searches. So that's a quick shortcut. Now as you're searching, sometimes you want to do a manual search in the code. So let's say we have a bit of code here, right? You can fold and unfold using the minus and plus icons in this lane here. So that's pretty handy. And there are also a lot of shortcuts for this. I'll just go over some of the main ones. So let's say we have a few functions, right? Sorry. Now I've created two, right? With the body, two functions with the body. If you do Command K and 0, you'll fold everything, right? And then if you want to unfold everything, Command K and J. It's like a mass fold and mass unfold. And then if you want to unfold something specifically that you're in, So let's say this is folded and you want to unfold this. Use Control Command and the closing bracket sign. Sorry about that. It's Option Command and then this closing square brace. Then I guess the last thing to check out is so just one thing, right? So the search here, you can use it to search and replace across all the files in the workspace as well. And if you don't open VS Code in a folder, the search only runs on the currently open files. Those are just closing notes on this. So yeah, search and replace is really handy if you're looking for a piece of code or something that's breaking your code, or I would say half of software engineering is finding code, so it's pretty handy to be able to just Control F quickly. Let's jump into extensions. So extensions are like one of the unique features of Visual Studio Code, and they give you a lot of more enhancements, which other text editors like Sublime or Vim might not. And extensions are really like handy. It's like Visual Studio Code is just the bare bones tool that you get, which is super powerful in its own self, but extensions just make it adaptable to any situation and any project. So let's jump in. So the first thing we want to check out is how you browse for them, right? So what you do is you click on this icon here, and this is the default view you'll get, right? So let's see some of the more popular ones. So just click on these dots here and say show popular extensions. You'll see a lot of the popular and trending extensions going on right now. In each extension, if you go to the details, so let's say we're talking about this one, or let's talk about Python, since it seems to be the most popular one right now. You get a basic one-line description here, and we'll jump into the different facets of it. So you have contributions, right? So contributions are the like the additions you're making to Visual Studio Code, like to the settings or shortcuts, because of this new extension that you're going to install. Changelog is it has all the like changes which have got made in this. In this case, let's say in this edition, right? You see the fixes which have got included on different days, kind of like a commit history. And dependencies. This one doesn't have dependencies. Let me pull up one which does. I think I know. I think debugger for Java did, as we saw earlier. Yeah. So this has got dependencies. So when you've got dependencies on some other extension, the dependencies will show up. Now let's say you want to install something, right? It's pretty straightforward. Just hit install. Usually you need to reload after the install, so the installation takes a few minutes. This is installed, right? So reload is nothing but restarting the Visual Studio platform. You don't need to do this for every extension, but sometimes you need it. Yeah. So let me show you an example of a reload. So one second. Let me go to my installed extensions, right? So if I disable something and I want to enable it again, oh well, not this one. My bad. You can see that this extension, the C++ one, it needs a reload when I've disabled it. So I just reload required, reload it, platform reloads, and the extension is fine. So occasionally you need to do that. If an extension isn't working, I have had to restart Visual Studio sometimes, and then it starts working. So reload or restart Visual Studio once in a while you need it. Normally things just work seamlessly. Yep. So let's just go over what we had in the options, right? So you can see all your installed extensions. see the outdated ones, as well as see what's enabled, disabled, built-in, recommended, popular extensions. And you can even disable all of them and enable all of them if you want to go back to bare bones Visual Studio. I don't know why you would want to do that, but in case you decide to go crazy. So searching for extensions is pretty easy. Just type in a keyword here, any substring. So for example, C will get you all C related extensions, right? And you can see all your currently installed ones, and then you can even uninstall them. It's pretty easy. So let's say I want to uninstall this, right? Just click on uninstall, super simple. If you want to disable, right, just hit disable. So you don't permanently remove it, but temporarily just disable the extension. Then you can enable it again really easily. So one more thing is Visual Studio is always checking for updates and will keep installing them unless you specifically go into settings and change it, which is pretty handy. I don't usually disable that feature. And in case you have disabled it, you can go into updating them manually, but I'd honestly just suggest you leave it to auto update. Yep. Search criteria you can put in the marketplace. So in extensions, let's say I go here and I say add recommended, right? You give recommended downloads based on like my recent file openings and stuff. That's pretty helpful. You can get extensions, like you can use filters like add installed to get what you've installed, right? Or recommended. There you go, which we just saw. You can even combine them. So if I use something like installed and putting category like themes, or selecting any category really. Let's see, not getting. So don't know what all I have. I've got a lot of debuggers. So you can combine a lot of these, right? You can even sort them. You can actually do all this stuff from here. Sort by name, sort by rating, right? So if you had to do that with a query, you can do that here, right? Neat stuff. And yeah, so you have a lot of options available to you here in the search, and essentially just use the marketplace to feel free to install whatever you need. Just be careful about getting extension packs and individual downloads independently. Sometimes installing multiple of the same thing doesn't work really well. So my review would be just install each thing manually instead of getting the combined packs. Jump into is navigating between the code. This is one of the most important lectures, not in terms of complexity, but in terms of usefulness. What it essentially means is when you're looking at code and reading larger files, how you move around between files and how you move around between, let's say a function is getting called and you want to quickly jump from the use of the function to where it's defined and declared to where it's implemented, just switching back and forth. It's really important when debugging issues. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to check out is how to just open up any file. Did this before in an early lecture. Just Command P and you can see all the files currently you've got in the space, so you can switch between them, right? Control Tab will let you see all the current files in the editor and toggle between them. Now, most languages like C#, you go to definition by pressing F12, right? So you should check out your shortcuts. I don't have that set up. So if you go to my keyboard shortcuts and I believe it should be go to, right. So from go to definition, I use command and the upper arrow key, and for go to implementation, command and down. It's usually F12 and command F12. So if I'm here and I use command up, I can go to the definition immediately, right? And since there's no implementation, I can see no implementation when I go command down or command F12 by default. So set your shortcuts to what you find comfortable with. You can even right click and do the same thing. Go to definition, go to implementation, peak definition. Peak definition allows you to peek the code of where the function is defined. In this case, it's a small file which I'm showing for simplicity, but in larger files this helps a lot, right? Yeah, so jumping between implementations and definitions is really important. Matching brackets is another important feature, right? So by standard, I think it's like command shift and then the backslash. But again, I don't use that. I use that more for commenting. So if you look at my keyboard shortcuts, I use I'm using shift command and B, right? So we're on this thing. Immediately when you select a bracket, the lower one gets highlighted. In larger files and functions, it might be that your code is so long that you have to scroll. So what you can use is command shift B in my case, because I've set it that way, or by default command shift backslash, and jump between the opening and closing of a bracket. It's helpful when you have issues like uh, let's say brackets matching issues. Helps debug those, right? To see all the errors and warnings currently in place, use command shift M. You'll get a list of the errors and warnings. Again, useful shortcut, handy to have when you need to debug issues. So that's all I wanted to show you in navigation, but the most important thing is going to implementations and definitions, I think. And if you don't, you can either set the shortcuts or just use right click and go to definition, peak definition, and go to implementation when you're looking at a function, right? Three important features. Let's jump into debugging. So debugging is one of the most important value adds that Visual Studio provided and now Visual Studio Code provides. Very simple to do, very effective. So let's get into it. So in the basic window that you have here, I've just clicked on debug, and you see variables, watch, call stack, and breakpoints. We'll get into each of them. But on the left side, you have the debug sidebar, right? And this is the start button, so this will start debugging. So I had set a breakpoint here, so the code has stopped. You get a suite of options here. So whether you want to pause, step over, step in, step out, restart, or stop the debugging, and the debug console here, just to give you an overview of the UI. So generally speaking, Visual Studio has a lot of debugging support inbuilt, and you don't need extensions, things like JavaScript or Node.js. But for a lot of other things like Java, you do need the extension. In the Java installation and setup video, we needed a debugger for Java extension. There are similar extensions. So if you say Python so here's a Python installation which provides you with a debugger. Similarly, if you just put in debugger, you'll see a debugger for Chrome, for Firefox. Many debuggers are available. So So you can install these for depending on what you're working with. So we've got a hello world type code here, simple program, and let's go about debugging it, right? One thing to watch out for, so you have the debug drop down here as well, so you can start debugging, all the options that you get while debugging, enable all breakpoints, disable all breakpoints, toggle breakpoint, so you can do a lot of things from here as well. So let's get started. You can even hit debug here with the Java debugger. So we've got the suite of options here. Usually you can use F5 to just continue, F10 to step over, F11 to step into. Those are the common ones that I normally use. Into too many details, as this is more of an intro video. Let me jump into how to actually debug the code. I'm not going to go into launch configurations and stuff. You rarely need them, and this is not for such an advanced user. So let's start, right? So I want to say debug. In variables, you see all the currently available variables. So test and A have come here, right? In watch, you can, in variables are the predefined variables in your code, but watch is like a predefined formula that you create. So for example, I want A and B, right? So 6 and 7 are not both even, so A and B gives you false, but A or B gives you true because 6 is even. But essentially you can evaluate things in watch that you couldn't in variables, right? So you can on the fly create code and see what the value would be in the watch section. This is really helpful while debugging and trying to figure out what's coming out of variables. There, we ran the code and now it's executed and finished. But you could see the use of watch and variables, right? Variables are the pre-existing variables, and watches specific things that you want to look out for, and you just define them as you want. You can even put in variable names here, but you already have them. As far as breakpoints, you just need to click here and you'll see them. You can remove, disable, and edit breakpoints just by right-clicking on them. So let me just show you how that works in action. So let's say I disable this one. It just jumped to the next one, right? On F5 or play. So, yep. Now let's jump into versioning. Just keep in mind that A, I'm on Windows, and B, the objective of this tutorial is not to explain Git, version control, GitLab, or anything of that sort. It's focused on how to integrate your existing Git repos with Visual Studio Code. So let's get started. If you do have questions on Git, I have another course which is on Git separately, but right now we're just focusing on how to integrate Git in VS Code. So let's get started. The first thing we need is, let's open up VS Code, right? Let's create a folder on our desktop, which is what we'll start working with. I won't go into remote right now. So let's open folder. So as you can see, I'm using a fresh folder, right? No files, nothing. Now the way you start working with Git is you click on the icon here. Right now you'll see nothing is provided, right? So typically what you would do is you would open git bash or terminal on the Mac. I'm on Windows right now, and you would go to the folder, right? And you would do git init like this to initialize your Git repo. But here you just click on this button here, right? And then you choose the folder, and you've initialized it. Now let's add a file. The first file. So I'm putting in some content. Let's just put down a few Pokemon. Right? Let's save that. Now if you go to Git, right, you'll see that this being marked as changes and the U means untracked. Okay, so if you go in the plus, it'll stage the changes. It's like git add basically. And now that it's staged, you can commit. So you can put a commit message and commit, right? You know which branch you're on because we have the master logo here. So now notice one thing, any changes you're making will get registered with this green tab here, green sort of line, which marks addition, blue marks modification, and red marks a deleted line. So that's how you know as you're working with the file after you've committed what the changes look like, just to give you an idea as you code along. So now what I'm going to show you is, let's add another few lines, right? So I just added another few lines. I go back to my Git. I see it's modified with the M. I can immediately see the changes with the git diff. I don't even have to pull anything off with the git diff. It comes automatically, and I see the additions that I made. So again, we can either discard the changes, stage the changes, or open file. So I'm gonna stage the changes, right, and put in another message. There we go. Let's go back to the Explorer. So that's how you can pretty much add and commit. The next thing we're going to look at is, once we've done that, how do we create another branch, right? So typically you would do like git checkout -b in git bash or terminal, git checkout checking you out to the next branch, and git -b the extension, or git branch name to create a new branch. Here just click on the branch name down here, and you can click on create new branch and say branch 2, right? And then I want to pull it out of master. So now we're on branch 2, and I selected switching to branch 2, so I'm automatically on branch 2 now. So yeah. Now let's make a few changes here, just for branch 2, right? Save that, go back to Git. You can see the one marker here showing you one file is changed. Let's add these changes in. So I've committed changes for this branch too, right? Now if I was to just switch back branches, you can see that the added comment for branch 2 has disappeared. So you know I was able to change the branches. That's it for the basic training here. Next we'll get into some more advanced topics. Let's begin working with Git and remote actions from Visual Studio Code. So let's open up Visual Studio Code first, right? I have it open to a particular repository. So what we're going to do first is Control-Shift-P to get the command palette, then go to Git clone. Right, we want to clone a repository. So let's say I've got a repository in GitLab here. You can do the same thing with GitHub or any other version control platform, right? So what I'm gonna do is git clone, get the URL, paste it in here and select a folder. Let's call it git 22. It says, would you like to open the clone repository or add it to the current? So I'm going to open the repository. I don't care about what I was doing earlier, right? So I've successfully cloned. I see all the files that are there, and I've been able to clone them. So if I do terminal right now and see new terminal, I see I've gone into git 22, which was the folder we created, and users is the git repo that I've got brought down, right? So now what we do is let's begin working with the files. So the last line here says Hakuna Matata, right? So let me add a line to this. Let's say I've added a line here. Of course, Git is now saying that there's a change, so it's detecting the change. So let's add it, commit, so we've successfully cloned the repository and we've committed some changes, right? So how do we now sort of figure out how to push the code? So notice one thing, just as sort of proof of the code that we're pushing. If you go into GitLab right now and see the folder, you'll see that at no point is this last line there, right? So if you go to the same file, dbg.txt, you don't see that last line, right? So look here, there's a button called synchronize. Click on that. It shows you how many changes have to get pulled in. So it pulls all the changes from the remote and then pushes the changes you've made. So it will push all the and pull all the commits from the current branch that they're in. and give you this warning message as you're about to do that. Right now 0 changes to pull and 1 to push. I said okay, and you put in your username and you can put in your password. Would you like to periodically run fetch? Not right, I don't want to make that decision right now. And I've successfully pushed the code, right? So if you refresh this, I see the new line here. Sweet. Now let's delve into what happens when you have a merge conflict. Right, time to artificially create a merge conflict to show you guys how powerful Visual Studio is. More than powerful, how convenient it is. So let's pull it up. Alright, so from the last video we've got this repository here, right? And there are no differences right now, as I can see. So let's add a line here. So I've added one line from the song here, and what I'm gonna do now is add a line here. Right? So these are different lines. So what's going to happen is we're going to create a merge conflict when we attempt to synchronize. But before that, we've got to make sure we stage and commit. Always give descriptive commit messages. Alright. So I think this should give you the conflict now. It's not updating properly, but normally you see the 1 show up. There you go. Yeah, you see 1 now. It's telling you there are merge conflicts, resolve them before committing, right? You've got a few options here. First one being accept the current change, accept incoming change, accept both changes, and compare. I'll start with compare. Compare will show you both the changes, right? So you can decide which one you want. Coming back here, so it's better than a normal text editor where you kind of have to decide this yourself and make the changes manually. Here you just have to click the button you want. Then accept both changes will keep both the changes. Very obvious, it will just leave both these lines here, right? Accept current change is the current change, so it means no worries this. So the change we made manually in our local staging area, which comes under head. Accept incoming changes is the changes in remote, this one. So let's say for now I want to do this, there. Right? So now it matches remote. And now that we resolve the conflict, we again have to, so we've merged changes, right? So this has to be staged, and then committed. Solve the conflict, right? If I wanted to save and commit, and now we attempt to synchronize. This should work through. So now it wants my username. then the password. You can configure SSH and bypass the username password issue instead of having it all the time. There, we've synchronized our changes, and the code's been pushed. You won't see any differences because I chose the remote, but you could have chosen any of the options.